Quay. Morning, Rev. It's 6:49 in the morning, West Coast time for Sunday, the 26th of May, 2024. And early this morning, they're still talking about politics, about this and about that, and about everything else. This weekend has been, if it already hasn't been driving you nuts with all my emails to you, sorry about that. It's reaching out for help sometimes, I think I overstay my welcome. I first discovered you several months back, and I was hearing some words of wisdom that was it's quiet enough to settle me out a little bit. And I know you got political. It wasn't exactly the politics. Everyone else is getting into the politics. Even I am not immune to it. But what I needed was something of peace of mind, peace of soul. And these days, I think we're going to get worse than that. Everybody else wants this or that, everything else going crazy. People looking at the political candidates, at least one thinks he's either one guy's going to be the Antichrist and the other one's going to be follower of God, and all these other pastors trying to tell us follow this guy, follow this guy. I still hold true to my beliefs that Trump's an idiot set up by something or someone else. I'm not going to spout out the conspiracy. All I know is people following the wrong guy right over the damn cliff, and I'm not about to do that one for myself either. But this weekend had been, still is right now, one of the most hardest ones for me to go through. I mean, I've stated many times that I've had a lot of relatives and friends, pets, family pass away. And it does, I know it does a lot of damage to a person who's sensitive, especially to a guy who had to survive open heart surgery, age of 4 years old, died 3 times, come back to life 3 times. And doesn't exactly give me a better viewpoint on anything else like life and death. It just scares the hell out of me of everything. Being isolated, alone, and dealing and coping with things. And it's not the funnest thing to go through, I'll tell you that much. So many stories I've put out there, and I'm still trying to pump out more memories and stuff, but maybe repeats of stuff. But it's my own way of therapy, trying to get this stuff off the chest, and not many people appreciate it. But it's my way of saying it's. I could shove all this stuff on flash drives, but then who's gonna know about a guy like me going through stuff? And sometimes I have to ask myself, why am I doing it? Maybe it's for a public service announcement or something. I don't know. But things have rattled me a great deal. I felt a little bit of sorrow when I lost him, and then I had to wall myself up. I had to put more moleskin on my soul to keep it all together, so I could just barrel on through. Worse than a bowl in a china shop. The years are going by. I get older, and I'm realizing more and more things. I get closer to death. But each day, I have to take it as blessing right now that I'm still alive. Maybe able to do something about it. How to do it. It scares my therapist if I'm starting to talk about suicide. Aaron, I've been talking about suicide. I've been talking about losing life. But I've never made a decision. I just always looked at that choice all the time. And the pain gets heavier and heavier that I've lost a lot of people that matter to me a great deal. I'm starting to wonder if I'm feeling the same way my mother did a long time ago, before she passed. She saw too many people, and she felt like her mind was going, that she wasn't able to think straight, and had depended upon her two boys to take care of her all the time. And it's a hell of a thing for a mother to ask this of her boys years earlier, but then to do it. But Dave and I did it. We were caregivers. She wasn't able to do her job, her work. She was a bookkeeping income tax specialist. She was good at numbers. She had client base. But I think over the years, when she kept losing family members and friends, it was adding to her, and she just probably couldn't deal with it. I hardly ever saw her react or emote when it comes down for grieving and mourning. I'd seen her react when it came down for pets. It was just 3 or 4 years with one pet, and she happened to lose that one. It devastated her. And it's like a couple of weeks later, day we got to go back over to the pound, see if we can get another rescue, because she can't deal with it anymore. It scares the hell out of me. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to be able to deal with that point in time, especially when my own dog goes. I mean, I was under the impression this particular semester, Reverend, that my mama was on that path. And she may be slowly. And I'm not quite sure if I'm going to continue education or not, depending upon her health, but I still want to. I don't care if I do online courses. I mean, I can do online courses. If I'm allowed to, I can do it. Order the material here, no problem. It just won't be any online stuff, online labs, but just do the work. I've done it in COVID. So, and I've also done it a few other times after COVID. So I don't mind the Zoom. It's depressing as hell, but when you get from a Zoom situation for about a semester or two, or even a year or two, and you go back to the land of the living, it's an adjustment, I'll tell you that much. Major adjustment. But it didn't stress me out as much, but I'm worrying about my dog right now. I'm not quite sure what God has in store. But I know my brother will be screaming for me. He did it in life and probably doing in death. Where is my faith and trust in God? Sometimes I have to ask that one. Because I know he's still looking at me. He's still watching me intently every time that question keeps popping up. Where is my faith? I don't know. Maybe I'm like Doubting Thomas in the books. Still trying to struggle. He knows, he acknowledges, but still he had to have physical sign that Christ was real. It's like me asking, it's like somebody asking me, where's your faith and trust in God? I have to keep looking at the physical signs I've got. It's not just all around me. It's still the scar on the elbow, on the arm. It's still the scar fading away, but it's still here in the chest. Saved for a purpose that I don't know what. So I still have to struggle with it. I still have to say, okay, if he's in charge, he saved me for a reason, and I gotta continue on what's going on. But I get scared. I get nervous. I get frustrated. I'm human. I'm not allowed to be this way. This week, I have been leading up to this moment. It's not Memorial Day itself. It's what's happening a couple of days after that that scares me. Or actually, a couple of days from now. It's the day after Memorial Day that I'm freaking out about. My brother's natal birth. He was 30. He was 8 years older than I was. 8 years old. I'm 58. He should have been 60 something right about now, you know? I should have been 66. Strokes took him out. Many strokes took him out. And that hurt. That hurt. It was hard for me seeing him like that. I mean, it was one thing seeing my mother slowly fading away and still I'm trying to deny it. I'm still trying to lie to myself at that point that she's going to get better. She's going to get better because I was terrified that she wasn't getting any better. I was afraid of the truth that she was dying in front of me, and there was not a damn thing I could do about it. She had faced a hell of a lot of emotional turmoil left and right, and I didn't know what I could do to help her out with it. But she never emoted. She never cried or bawled concerning about, at least not in front of her boys. And David did the same thing. I mean, nobody ever cried in front of me because I'd look at it as weak. We should have been crying together at this point. But we weren't. We were too damn afraid of showing weakness. Weakness is part of being human, isn't it? I'm supposed to show strength. I'm supposed to show happiness. I'm supposed to. I'm supposed to. I'm supposed to. That's the drill, isn't it? If we actually had the social media going on during those times, if we actually had the videos being posted, what the hell could we tell anybody about it? Not a damn thing, Reverend. Nothing. Quiet. Crickets. So why am I the only one doing all these stories left and right? It's like I don't want them to die off and just fade away like everybody else. I had to tell stories. I had to talk about them. Maud, sometimes she can be a royal pain in the butt, but the rest of the time, she may be authoritative, but she still had a heart of gold. I know she took it personally when she had two friends split over a decision made. And it took one friend a long time to get back. And at one time, Mom was split off from D. I said the other friend, it was her nickname was oh shit, Terry McGrath. Mom met her at a H&R Block training seminar back in the 80s, back in late 80s. Ma was already determined to get her business going. She wanted to get a business, a bookkeeping income tax business. She knew she could do this. I know there was handicaps that she actually had, but despite the lack of education or the quote unquote formal education and certificates and stuff, she never did complete junior high. She never went through high school, but she was still so smart. She was able to do things. She worked at a young age. In a teen, she had to work for survival. She worked in stores as a clerk and then got into the numbers and started helping out with the accounting department until she became part of the accounting department. Five and nines were busy or were plentiful back in the 50s and 60s. But she proved her worth on that one, and she worked at other jobs that needed her accounting, her mathematical skills. She knew she could do the schooling, but she just. I guess they didn't have the GED back then. She wanted to go back to do a GED, but she just never had the time. She never took the time to go for a GED because that would have given her more credibility. That would have given her status. That would have given her a more formal education concerning about accounting principles and other things that she needed. But she already had them. So when she got an H&R Block, it was almost It was challenging, but it was still easy enough for her to get through it. And she had a friend still struggling trying to learn the damn stuff, and every time she got it wrong, Terry would say, "Oh shit!" My mother would laugh all the time. They two became good friends. They became good friends, and then we had to meet up with a family. Interesting family that they had. Long stories on those. But they did have a friendship, and Terry came over, or she would call, and I hear this, "Oh, it's you again. Ma! Oh, shit's on the line. I'll be there in a minute, John." I should do the same thing, and my brother and her would exchange some pleasantries. Were good times back then. We actually were feeling like we had chilled and we had families. We had families knowing each other. Terry was jealous about Dee and about Ma. Ma knew Dee a lot longer. I mean, back in '76, when there was a move from one area to another area of San Fernando Valley. And Dee was the next door neighbor we moved, you know, next door to. And she helped Ma out with transportation to and from hospital regarding me and David. From that time, we kind of gelled for a long period of time. But I tell you, after long decades, even that relationship can fray a bit. Because right after we lost Ma, I know they were losing their own mother in the hospital. When David and I had met her, she was losing her memory a bit more and more. She wasn't keeping herself on the simulator enough, but she remembered me and David and some of the stuff we were going through. I had taken a couple of pictures of her. One was a good smiling picture of her. It reminded me of a picture I had taken back from Christmas back in the late 80s, early 90s, where, or back in the 80s, I guess, somewhere. And I had these two ladies smiling at the camera. There's some good pictures I've got in my digital folder. Archives I still wanted to hold on to. I hurt like hell to see them though, because how much I loved these ladies. One of them was my mother. The other one was a surrogate mother. You talk about sweet and sour. Dee was not sour, but she could be. Ma was sour, but she was a lot of sweetness at times. But she was my mother. It's like weeks or months after Ma died, Dee died. Soul sisters. And lost contact with the family after that. Grief hits us in a number of ways. I don't care. I don't know how many times I kept trying to communicate, or did I? I don't remember. Videos sent out on YouTube and on Facebook just to see if I could get any response. But apparently they probably opted off of that for a long while. Part of their group is out in Texas, Cedar Park, Texas. Every time there was problems, I was just trying to see whether or not there was any issues, including this time what they had all the tornado activity again. Because I'm hoping maybe they're still alive, Benny or even his family. They had a kid just grow up and go to college. He graduated high school. I didn't realize it. And I graduated out of 4 year. I was looking at the posters. And I'm like, damn, I missed a lot of life with these kids. That's my friend. You talk about isolated. You talk about feeling cut off, dismayed. It hurts seeing others go on different paths and wish I could have been there with them. And yeah, it makes me tear up. It's like I question if I'm going to be worthy enough to even see any one of them when it's my time. And will anybody care on the earth that once it's my time to pass, if I'm going to be allowed to see anyone in my family? Indeed, her family was part of my family. If not by genetics, but by spirit, I think. Reverend, I've never put myself, or actually imagined myself in this situation for a long time, that losing people is like losing identity and losing pieces of my heart. I view Memorial Day not just a patriotic, but of trying to remember and memorializing those I've lost, if not through death, but through paths diverging. It hurts. All my life I tried to avoid stuff like this. Ma was a bit of rambling, and then D. There was a little dog I've had for a decade and a half called Little Boy. He was a Papillon Terrier black and white mix. You would have loved him. Scrappy little, scrappy little. Mm. But the biggest hit was my brother. Soon to be my little dog of Mama's. I'm sorry if I'm driving you crazy with this, Reverend. I'm sorry if I'm still struggling like crazy over this. I don't view Memorial Holiday as just celebrating the death of veterans in hell. I even had to ask questions about those in my videos about it. What is considered memorializing a veteran? And what are the criteria? Have they supposed to be dying of a patriotic death, or was it passing away somewhere unnoticed, unloved, that nobody else was hardly ever paying attention to? When they weren't dealing with the battleground of somebody throwing pieces of lead at them or trying to blow them to hell. What about the guys trying to deal with the damn war zones in their heads and their hearts and dealing with life? Or how about those veterans just dying off even with their family? Are they going to be memorialized as well? Or is it only the explosive nature that has to merit it? I challenged a cousin on this one. We all had the notion it would be a patriotic death and dying under the red, white, and blue, and that's why we have to memorialize them, because we're so patriotic. And I kept saying more and more of the veterans offing themselves and not under that and just not getting recognition. Veterans who die one way or another that don't get it, except if it's through combat, then they're glorious people to patronize. Oh, I could throw in the epithets on that one. I can only shed tears. That's the only thing I can do. My brother had lived a life. He struggled in the Navy. He struggled out of the Navy. He struggled with addiction, and I helped him out with it, and so did Ma. We threw him out. A few months later, he came back as a walking skeleton, needing help. He was dealing with a lot of situations happening in the Navy that they wouldn't even recognize or tolerate it or even help my brother through. He kept trying to appeal most of his life, and he couldn't. It just kept rejecting him. This country thought he turned his back on him, and basically he was doing things for the country that they didn't even fucking realize, by my language. And all those letters are gone long ago. Lost. My brother gave up hope on it. He had stories, he felt good about it, but I know there was despair in the guy. He wanted to show people he still mattered. I wanted to show that he still mattered. The clock still stays up there, broken as hell, but it was my brother anyway. He bought that from a specialty store online. But it was so him. It was so him. Easy day was yesterday. And SEALs never quit. Even his own SEAL community kind of forgot about him, didn't want to deal with him. I dealt with him. I dealt with him. I had stayed with him. He was my big brother. What else was I supposed to do as a younger brother? I've heard of people believing each other, somehow having reconciliations one way or another, but years later I didn't want to leave my big brother. He was my rock. He was everything. But I know he thought that way of me too. He wanted to be that way on a constant basis, but there's no way he could all the time. You got to be human, you know. You got to have some kind of weakness. He kept saying, bluster, he was going to be his end on his own terms. God added to plans. Many strokes in his head. Took out his ability to speak and ability to take care of himself. And I'm still going to college, and I said, hell with it. I'm going to take care of my brother because that's my job. I made a promise a long time ago to Mon. I probably made a promise to him that whatever happens to him, I'd take care of him. I did the best I could with Mon. I mean, I worked full time at a retail from hell, Wally World. Don't get me started on that Pandora's box. And did 24/7 as much as I could at home. Days off, I didn't have days off because I was still days on, hands on. Ma needed this, Ma needed that. We needed to take her to the hospital. We needed to take her to the doctor's office. If they couldn't take her, we'd have the nurses coming out. Last year or two of her life, we had nurses coming in, giving all the vitals to the doctors. If she was going to be transported, she was going to be transported. If not, they'd take care of it at home. She hated going out. But she really hated to be in that situation anyway, where she just couldn't take care of herself. I had to see it in her eyes. I had to see it in her eyes. And she was grateful, I think, in their eyes also that she had the boys taking care of her. But she was in how much pain. As I'm looking back into memories, I'm trying to see her expressions, her eyes. The last time she was really smiling was around Christmas time, last Christmas. She couldn't see the Christmas tree. She couldn't be around the Christmas tree that I decorated. Despite the time I made photos of it. She liked seeing it, but I wanted her to have a Christmas tree. So I had carried a Christmas tree for decades on my desk. I'd gone a long time ago. There was a Christmas party at a company my mother worked for as a accountant controller. And in a Christmas party, they had this money tree, plastic artificial thing. And somehow in a raffle, I won this thing. And I kept it all the time. If there was a nightstand right next to my bed, I'd put it right there. On the last day of her life. The last Christmas of her life, she had to have a Christmas tree decorated. And I had pictures of it too. I had a picture of a little girl when she was a lot younger, Spryer. And she was actually able to move around and hang around Mama's bed. I will always keep telling me, Johnny, Mama needs to go out. All right, Ma, here I come. Come on, dog. Somehow she'd find a way to get on the Mama's hospital bed. Sometimes we'd put her on her. And on this stand, she also had a bedside commode that we also turned it into a stand. And we had the Christmas tree there. The little girl's laying right next to it, and Ma. It was a hell of a picture. And during that time, I guess I needed something ridiculous to remember my mama by. So I gave her a Christmas hat. I had to get a photograph with that during Christmas time. The hardest memory to have, Reverend, is nearly the last day of her life. She actually remembered who I was and actually asked for pomelos. She loved pomelos. She loved pomelos. God, decades. Been decades since she had worked at that company, a non-profit entity. And every Sunday they would have a farmer's market. Have a guy named Gene coming from Ojai Valley with his pomelos and other produce. But Ma wanted all the pomelos. She loved them. She was greedy. She loved the sweetness of them. She got me hooked on the damn things. Every time she ate one half, I'd eat the other half. My last meal on earth was pomelos. We had one left in the refrigerator. I kept it there for 6 months until it just started to give away, and then we had to get rid of it. Take a picture of it, I think, somehow. It's memories like that. It gets harder and harder to deal with because painful situation there, Rev. Even the last day, I had just given her pomelo. She already had something in her stomach. And then we had to add a cold chill in the place. They say that when the afterlife comes in, it sucks out all the heat, the ambient heat in the area. It leaves this cold spot. We didn't realize one of the big monkeys was over there. He's either Gabriel or Raphael. It was Michael. I think it was one of those two names Ma was talking to. And she had been talking to relatives all that week, no longer than that. They'd be coming in and chatting it up, whatever. just to reassure her. Dave and I couldn't figure it out. Was she losing her mind during that time? But Dave had to listen to the conversations. And then he took me aside and said, John, she's talking to all of our dead family. And I'm looking back in the memories like, shh. But Dave didn't do that. Ma had a long road. David was a short-termer. He was a short-timer on that one. When Dave passed, he was already having problems with mobility, but apparently he was given the grace of communication and mobility to get my attention, to call 911, to get an ambulance over. He was joking and talking with him. I'm trying to get gear together and get Ma stabilized in here, get in the ambulance, get the hell out, call for transportation back home because it would be on a day or a time that transportation would suck. But if I had to get back home, I had to get back home. So hopefully I'd call for people to give me a hope ride home. And one of the people in recovery actually did, but only without David. Somewhere between the ambulance ride from here and the emergency room. That must have fought like hell. Dave didn't feel like Dave anymore. I came into the room and it was cold. But I didn't even realize how cold it was. I guess Dave was already outside the body. All I saw was a corpse, a piece of meat. I yelled at it. But there was no life. Nothing. I almost came that close to getting escorted by security. Disturbing people on the floor. It changes the person, Reverend. It's one thing dealing with death all the time. Changing little by little, but this one was... I couldn't deal with it anymore. I broke. I still had to be strong enough to take care of a few things, and then bug invasion, bed bugs coming in, cook off the place, sign up another rental agreement. I couldn't go back to college for about a semester and a half. I had to go back in the fall and try to continue on. I was in a honeymoon. The shock was still there. Sometimes I cry, but not enough. I get triggers, but now I was learning, getting initiated with the triggers. Coming up on 6 years in September, Reverend. 6 years. I've talked about it little by little to the therapist, and I discovered that doing the videos I can do a lot longer, but I just had to pour the heart and soul out sometimes, you know. Put it on my own channel and cry my eyeballs out, left crazy if I had to. Try to talk about family, try to talk about memories, talk about something that mattered the most. Besides the political crap. I was talking about how to be human. I'd seen other people weren't allowed to be human. They could cry, they could weep, but they really couldn't show tears in front of a camera if they had to, have them pouring down. Except if you want ratings. It's embarrassing to break down in front of a camera. So I tell a story. I tell a story about how the hell I was dealing with it. I'm still dealing with it. I'm a writer. I'm a writer telling stories on air. I just didn't realize that misery like this would be the topic all the time. I'm sorry if I wasted your time, Reverend. What makes harder for this weekend is the memories. It's the memories. I had a brother suffering through PTSD because the stuff he went through in the Navy, some of it was combative, and the other was too much of a personal attack on him. He had to have treatment for it in his later life, and it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy for him going to a doctor's office and asking for pills to take care of bad memories. I was always afraid of getting nailed by that. Medications I had to survive on for the rest of my life. I'd just rather say, just kill me and get it over with. Too many videos on this one here, Doc, of resentments and stuff. Me versus the medical establishment. Too many videos. Anyway, Reverend, I had to get this off my chest. I'm sorry for wasting your time. I hope you try and have a good one this week.